Good morning. I'm Alina from AXU Immigration News. A clear and forceful shift is underway in U.S. immigration policy under President Donald Trump, aimed at sharply reducing both illegal and legal immigration, tightening border controls, and narrowing humanitarian protections. The administration frames these measures as essential to national security and public safety, while critics argue they erode long-standing protections, destabilize families and employers, and upend expectations for people who followed existing rules. Understanding the current atmosphere means looking at how enforcement inside the country has intensified, how the border has been militarized, how travel and visas are being restricted, and how refugee and asylum pathways are being closed or reshaped. At the heart of the current approach is a philosophy that treats almost any immigration violation as grounds for removal and views broad categories of migrants with suspicion, not only those crossing the border without authorization. One of Trump's signature early moves in this second term was declaring a national emergency at the southern border and directing agencies to end what he calls catch and release and replace it with catch and detain, meaning people are held in custody rather than released while their cases proceed. This is coupled with expanded use of expedited removal, allowing authorities to rapidly deport people who cannot quickly prove lawful status, including many who have lived in the country for months or even nearly 2 years. Inside the United States, interior enforcement has become far more aggressive and visible, with more raids, more workplace actions, and a broader set of people treated as priorities for arrest. Previously, special emphasis was often placed on those with serious criminal records, but under the new enforcement orders, any undocumented person is considered a candidate for criminal charges and deportation simply because of their unlawful presence. This shift has contributed to a climate of fear in many immigrant communities, where ordinary tasks such as driving to work, taking children to school, or appearing in court on unrelated matters now feel risky, especially in cities and states that do not offer strong local protections. An important piece of this landscape is the way federal authorities interact with state and local governments, particularly in places sometimes labeled sanctuary jurisdictions. Executive orders encourage or pressure local law enforcement to cooperate more closely with federal immigration agents and threaten to withhold certain federal funds from jurisdictions that decline to honor detainer requests or share information. This dynamic has fueled legal and political battles over whether local police should act as extensions of federal immigration authorities, with some states and cities resisting and others enthusiastically aligning with federal enforcement priorities. The southern border itself has been reimagined not only as a line to be patrolled, but as a security zone where military resources, new barriers, and surveillance technologies play a central role. Orders call for more physical barriers and the deployment of armed forces and advanced systems such as unmanned aerial vehicles, as well as enhanced tools to verify family relationships among people arriving as units, especially parents and children. These measures are promoted as necessary to deter smuggling and human trafficking, yet humanitarian groups warn they push migrants into more dangerous routes and make it harder for genuine asylum seekers to safely reach U.S. officials to request protection. Asylum, a long-standing protection for people fleeing persecution, is being constricted both at the border and within the system as a whole. Policies block or severely limit access for many would-be asylum seekers at ports of entry, restrict who can qualify based on particular claims, and empower officials to quickly return or remove people without giving them the chance to fully present their fears. Legal advocates expect a wave of court challenges, arguing that these measures undercut obligations under U.S. law and international agreements that guarantee a meaningful chance to seek asylum when facing persecution. Refugee admissions, which are handled through a separate program for people vetted abroad, have been cut to historically low levels and subjected to new forms of scrutiny. The administration has suspended the main U.S. refugee admissions program for an extended period, allowing only case-by-case exceptions while officials review and potentially overhaul the system. Looking ahead, the announced cap for refugee arrivals has been slashed for 2026, signaling that even once formal suspensions are lifted, the overall number of people offered refuge through this channel will likely remain very small. The same security-first mindset appears in the travel and visa policies that govern who can board a plane to the U.S. in the first place, with a large new travel ban framework playing a central role. Through proclamations and related guidance, the administration has either fully or partially barred visa issuance and entry for nationals of dozens of countries, many of which are predominantly from certain regions or already subject to prior restrictions. While some categories of travelers, such as existing visa holders, permanent residents, dual nationals, or athletes traveling for major sporting events, may be exempted in specific texts, the practical result is that millions of people now face categorical barriers, regardless of their individual histories. In addition to barring entry from targeted countries, the government is implementing so-called enhanced vetting across the system. This includes deeper background checks, more intensive security screenings, and the possibility of long administrative processing delays for a wide range of visa applicants, including students, workers, and family members. Lawyers and employers expect to see more requests for additional evidence, more denials, and more last-minute cancellations or revocations of visas, often without clear explanations, which injects uncertainty into long-term planning. A striking feature of the current period is the effort to roll back or rescind legal statuses that people already held under previous administrations. Reports indicate that large numbers of individuals have lost some form of recognized legal status or protection, whether through the phase-out of certain humanitarian programs, the non-renewal of temporary protections, or the cancellation of visas for those deemed to pose risks. In some cases, people who had complied with government requirements for years now discover that the frameworks that allowed them to live and work lawfully are being revoked or allowed to expire without replacement, leaving them suddenly vulnerable to removal. Temporary protected status, long used to shield people from countries facing war or disaster, has also come under pressure. Permissions for various nationalities are being allowed to expire or are scheduled to terminate, creating the prospect that, for the first time since the program's creation, no one may remain under its protection if the current trajectory continues. This prospect is particularly alarming for communities that have built lives in the U.S. over many years under TPS, and now face a choice between returning to unstable conditions or trying to remain without status. Even diversity visas and other long-standing legal pathways are being reevaluated or curtailed under the broader goal of restricting migration. Officials have announced suspensions or significant changes to programs that once offered opportunities to people from underrepresented countries, often citing isolated criminal cases as justification for systemic shutdowns. For those who had hoped to use these channels, the shift sends a clear message that fewer doors will be open, and any route that is seen as generous or random may be a target for closure. The administration emphasizes that holding a visa or work authorization is a conditional privilege that can be revoked, and it has used that authority much more aggressively than recent predecessors. Thousands of visas have reportedly been canceled across categories, including student visas, sometimes following criminal conduct, but also as part of a broader tightening of standards and security reviews. Public statements from officials underline that those who are seen as threats to safety or contrary to perceived national interests will not be allowed to remain, even if they previously complied with the rules. For employers, universities, and communities that depend on foreign talent and international connections, these developments introduce significant instability. Businesses must plan for more denials and delays when hiring from abroad, and they may need contingency strategies if key employees cannot get visas renewed or face sudden revocations. Educational institutions, meanwhile, worry that unpredictable treatment of students and scholars will deter applicants and harm the country's ability to attract global talent, particularly in science and technology fields. In immigrant neighborhoods, the cumulative effect of enforcement, travel bans, visa uncertainty, and shrinking humanitarian protections is a deep sense of vulnerability and mistrust. Families split across borders fear that relatives may never secure permission to join them, while those already in the U.S. may avoid contact with authorities even when they are victims of crime or witnesses, out of concern that any interaction could expose them to immigration checks. Community organizations and legal aid groups respond by urging people to know their rights, prepare emergency plans, and stay closely informed about rapidly changing rules that might affect their status. At the policy level, supporters argue that these moves finally align immigration with a stricter reading of national interest, promising fewer unauthorized crossings, more security screening, and a system they view as less vulnerable to abuse. Critics counter that the approach overcorrects by indiscriminately targeting many who pose no threat, discarding America's traditional role as a destination for refugees and strivers, and ignoring the economic and humanitarian costs. These tensions ensure that immigration will remain a central political and legal battlefield, with lawsuits, state-federal clashes, and public protests all shaping how fully the administration can entrench its vision. For anyone directly affected, whether undocumented, on a temporary visa, seeking to bring family members, or hoping to apply for asylum or refugee status, the key theme is uncertainty and the need for up-to-date, individualized guidance. General trends show a clear move toward restriction, heightened enforcement, and greater scrutiny, but the precise impact on each person depends on nationality, immigration history, and the specific program involved. In this environment, staying informed, documenting status carefully, and consulting reliable legal or advocacy resources are essential steps for navigating an increasingly unforgiving system. If you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing to AXU Immigration News for more clear, accurate, and timely immigration news. Share this video with someone who needs to know. Goodbye.